Happy Thursday. Welcome to Screen Junkies Universe, where we're discussing what kind of yoga we do. Spencer?
Nothing yet, but that gave me an idea. We should do like a nerdy yoga channel.
Yes, we should.
I'd be fine with that.
Don't talk about it live
sorry.
on
meeting
the air.
after the show.
Nobody talks about the app outside of the app meetings. Dan Murrell, what kind of yoga do you do?
None.
Okay. Joe Starr?
I do the kind where I buy a Groupon with the best intentions, use it once, and then never go again. Yeah.
That's very good. I do the same yoga that Joe Starr's wife does, which is Yoga with Adrienne, which you can find on YouTube. And I have not been paid at all to do that.
Sponsor.
She's a streaming winner, just like us.
She is a streaming winner, actually. Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Ryan Reynolds, we still have your streaming.
If you want
to come pick it up.
Best collab.
Feel free.
Come by.
Yeah, come on by. We won't throw you on camera.
This is us spreading the YouTube love today. And we actually have real entertainment news things to discuss.
Huzzah.
It's a broccoli show.
Don't tell them.
These are the days I live for.
Broccoli with mac and cheese.
Ooh.
Actually, that's another decision I have to make today because there is mac and cheese available. This is actually really, really interesting. It's about the changing face of Hollywood, and we have three different stories that sort of speak to it in a way that is distinct but also ties together, starting with Sony Chairman. And here we go. Ready? This is at NAPTE, which is the National Association of Television Program Executives Conference. The entertainment chairman, Tony Vinciquerra, echoed the comments of a lot of CEOs right now in terms of basically the need to, and these are my words, adapt or die. Studios are facing more and more competition and need to reach a greater market share. He basically has talked about something that we have discussed. That is, if you don't grow, you're going to be sold. And he said that exactly. If we don't grow, somebody's going to purchase us. And I didn't take this job to do it for a year and then sell the company. So he's digging in and he wants to make Sony work. However, he thinks that all of the major studios will shrink from 6 to 3 or 4 in a couple of years. We have speculated about that as well. And then he talks about them competing against entities like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. He says, we're a tiny little minnow fighting against all of these gigantic companies. If they want to step on us, they can do it. And here's the other thing is that those companies that are sort of, they are in content in that they are producing content, but they're often doing it to drive to other things, to products, to services. Mm-hmm. They're not doing it content for content's sake, which perhaps is the new model over the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. But he's talking about basically that the movie business has become very binary. Things are working or they don't. And he highlighted the importance of social media and the recent success of Jumanji, and he attributes a lot of that to The Rock and Kevin Hart's social media following and how hard basically, The Rock is also really working for it. He pushes very hard in his following. And then the final thing that he brought up, and then we're just going to open it up to you guys, is Movie Pass, which we've talked about a lot as well, and how that's changing things. And he just basically said what we've said, which is I'm questioning how that can be economically feasible. It seems like the more they sell subscribers, they will be in more and more trouble. They're also developing VR, which he doesn't think is quite ready yet. But he's picturing what we talked about the other day in terms of location-based entertainment centers that will pop up for VR. There's a lot to unpack in just that, but let's talk about, are we going to have what we thought, mega studios and then tiny, tiny studios that are offering alternative programming?
Neons and A24s scattered around.
Yeah.
Houses.
It's interesting to see an actual studio head or an entertainment chair say, hey, listen, we got to get bigger or someone's going to buy us. I mean, that just kind of, it's one of those moments of honesty. It's like usually people kind of couch that around, so kind of like, well, it's a changing marketplace. I kind of like that. He's just like, hey, listen, it sucks, and it's kill or be killed right now. It's kind of depressing, if I'm being honest, just to think about it. But I like that he's pointing to Jumanji, which is like, I contend that Sony stumbled into that.
Sure.
Accidentally. Like, that was an $80 to $90 million movie, so that was the kind of not $200 million thing. They opened it against Star Wars, which conventional wisdom says you don't do.
Yeah.
But I think they accidentally made this massive hit because they did in a weird way, because it was so small. They were just like, well, whatever, we'll just make it a fun story and put some really entertaining movie stars in it, and hopefully we'll make our money back. It's like, no, that's how you make a good movie. Like you made a hit movie by kind of
not-
hedging your bets and doing this like that. Jumanji is how studios succeed, is write a story around some good stars, make it a good story, an entertaining story, play to the strengths of the people that you have, and people will go see it. That's the formula, but it's kind of like, how did they do it? It's like they made a good movie that people wanted to go see.
Yeah, but it seems like to him, he's like, Jumanji's a big hit because The Rock has a lot of Facebook followers, and it's like that is such a dangerous recipe
true.
for making the worst possible movie with the most Logan Paul in it.
Yeah.
The Rock is one of one, and yeah, he has like a super engaged like social media following and he pushes for it, but like, that's not a repeatable thing. There's no more Rocks out there. Yeah. It's like The Rock and Vin Diesel are the two people who can like drive their following to go see a movie just because they have 40 million, 60 million.
Riddick might tell you different.
And exactly.
Yeah.
And like The Rock has some not huge successes, so it's not guaranteed. And so yeah, you can't just, I feel like we've already been through this wave of like finding people who are big on Instagram and like throwing them in the movie, and it doesn't work.
Well, and yeah, they drive awareness.
Yeah,
people were aware of Jumanji, but I mean,
aware and actually doing something.
Yeah.
Well, it was
are
a
two different
fun
things.
movie.
yeah, it was a fun
They made
movie.
a fun movie, and then he
was
talked
a
about
really
it.
fun movie that people in the holiday season said like, oh, I just want to go have a really just good time.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of laughs, it's got a lot of action, and like make a good make a good movie.
Something
That's what you do.
Something I
Radical
wonder
thinking, Dan.
is, are they now confusing social media followings and influencers with just word of mouth? Because in the olden days, when a movie was in theaters for a couple of months, it was in theaters for a couple of months because word of mouth took some time to kind of get moving, and now word of mouth is kind of instant. Do you guys think that, because as people who survive on sharing stuff online and getting the word out, you can look at the analytics and you can say, oh, this got shared 1 million times, it got clicked 300 times. So there's a difference, like you said, between getting the word out and actually like driving people to the theater.
Well,
Do you
Jumanji,
think word of mouth just works quicker now? So Jumanji was a hit.
and The
quicker.
Greatest Showman too.
Yeah.
Jumanji and The Greatest Showman both came
Word
out
of mouth.
right around the same time, and they're both like posting these great holds 5 weeks later because of word of mouth. Like I think he's kind of half right in that social media plays an important part in the sense that if people see a movie that they love, they're going to go on Twitter, or Facebook, Instagram, whatever. It's like, oh my God, this movie's incredible, but it has to be a good movie. You can't just be like,
Yeah.
why'd you see Jumanji 3 times?
The Rock.
Because The Rock talked about it on Twitter. Like that's not quite how
because
it works.
memes, yeah.
But the more
Sure.
depressing thing is this idea of just like, you can't just be a success. Like you have to be a global juggernaut or you're going to get scooped up, which is terrifying, but sort of true. I mean, we've been moving toward that for like the last however 10 years.
Yeah, and if you look at, well, first of all, new rule, every time anybody says in olden times or refers to olden times, they must do it in a 1940s. Whatever you're going to say is said like this.
Olden
That's
times, back in my day.
Back in my day, in the olden times, breaking news.
However, I will say that one of the things that I do think that he's talking about that is different and interesting is think about the idea of Sony as a minnow. As just like this tiny little mom and pop shop fighting against the mass entity of Google. But it's true. Or Apple, financially, that's certainly true. Apple is just like, they could outspend God at this point.
Yeah, same with Amazon.
Sorry if you're offended by that. And same with Amazon.
God's way richer than Apple.
Yeah.
He has way more money.
Way more money than Apple.
I saw Forbes.
I think God operates on a different kind of currency.
He's more into Bitcoin.
God's really into cryptocurrency. But yeah, there's something, I don't know, there's pros and cons to all sides of this. There's something like antitrust concerns aside, maybe the programming is better if it's run, if the entire content department of one of these companies is like one cell on the Excel spreadsheet next to like iPad, like, so they won't like be so hand-wringing and into the minutia, like, oh, we got to hedge our bets, we need to do like a franchise, we need to like, they won't be so conservative and so risk averse if the content is just like one tiny slice of the business. They won't you see that with Netflix, like they'll put anything out.
Sure,
Right
we're gonna
now,
have a
right
counter.
now.
We're gonna have a counterpoint for you.
Counterpoint.
Actually, let's skip ahead because Spencer brought us there, and here's the counterpoint to that, which is that, and then I'll circle back to the streaming summit. But Amazon has talked about specifically, they've just canceled 3 shows, and they've said specifically that they need to have broader appeal in order to better sell their toilet paper. They didn't say that. That's my add-on, but they did. They said that they had to have programming with broader appeal, and so they've sunk how many millions of dollars into this Lord of the Rings series? And then they have maybe 1 or 2 prestige shows like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which once again, I recommend that you watch. It's delightful. But so you would hope that this gives us more interesting programming, but maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos said, enough of this nickel and dime crap. This isn't a direct quote, but basically it was like, I'm tired of doing these niche shows like Mozart in the Jungle that get a Golden Globe. And so they canceled the Kevin Bacon show, I Love Dick, which is whatever. One Mississippi, which is Tig Notaro's show, which got a lot of acclaim and was certainly in the news with the whole Louis C.K. situation. And then Jean-Claude Van Johnson, which is one that was kind of, again, it was a niche show, but it was one that people enjoyed. But he's basically, there's been a directive from Amazon saying, I want Game of Thrones. Give me a Game of Thrones. We need a big, broad market show with international appeal. And enough with, I think they didn't pick up any comedy. They did their pilot season. I don't think they picked up any of the comedy pilots for the first time ever. It's kind of like they're saying, like, enough of these small shows. We want big shows that we can sell internationally, which to me is how you get 15 subpar versions, copies of Game of Thrones on the air, and no interesting, Breaking Bad didn't start out as a big juggernaut, nor did Stranger
Didn't Amazon
Things,
have that sort of stupid pilot program where it's like, we'll crowdsource our shows, like people can just send in their work for free and we'll vote.
Yeah.
Like that's another little, just like a culture clash of Silicon Valley and Hollywood of being like, it's okay, guys. Like, we know how to do this. We've got algorithms, and then not realizing that things work a certain way for a reason in Hollywood.
I don't know why the idea of we've got algorithms.
Which can be helpful for sure, but it's maybe not something that needs to be disrupted for it to work. Like, you need to kind of work on creative people's terms, which is different from Silicon Valley sometimes.
It reminds me of, I had a friend of mine who did a couple things on the internet that went viral, just the way that viral videos do. And he kept telling us that he took meetings with 2 or 3 companies that would sit him down and just say tell me how to make a viral video,
right? And
get their notepads out and just be or they'd say make us a viral video, and he's like, I can't.
It's not in your
that's
control.
Not how it works. And I kind of feel like that's what
would it be like to be asked to do something like that?
Well,
to magically make a video.
Luckily, people, they don't do that anymore. That's not, we've learned. I think that there's this desire. It's an extremely seemingly inefficient way to do work, is to make whole episodes of shows and throw them out, and then people don't like them and you throw them out and you make a whole thing, it never sees the light of day.
It was a stupid idea, and I think I really think they don't do that anymore, but I think that as far as I know, but I think that their idea there was, oh, I know, we're Amazon, we can sell you our toilet paper and we can be interactive with you. We'll have the fans vote and our consumer will vote, and that way
it's a larger scale version of the Doritos Super Bowl commercial, which is my favorite running gag in moving to Los Angeles. It's in your checklist of coming here to pursue your dream, where your first or second year in LA, you're like, we submitted our Doritos commercial for the Super Bowl, guys. Yes. And they own it, and you did all the work for Doritos, and now they get to, air your stuff that they just paid you $100 for.
$100, you say?
Yeah. It's sort of a larger scale version of that.
It just seems to me this Lord of the Rings thing is Amazon's version of sitting someone in their office and saying, make me a viral video. It's like, you can't...
Make me a Lord of the Rings?
Make me a Lord of the Rings. Make me a Game of Thrones. It's like, you just make Game of Thrones and it happens. But Game of Thrones wasn't made this is a huge international thing. It was no, this is some...
It was very risky.
Yeah, even in the first season, it wasn't a big deal.
This is this kind of dinky medieval show that doesn't even have the money to show a battle.
But doing a giant, a giant budget Lord of the Rings series, this is as close to a sure hit as you can get of making a giant budget Lord of the Rings series. I mean, that's as close to...
You mean Tom Bombadil Year 1, as I'm hoping it's called? Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you said the same thing about The Hobbit.
Well, Game of Thrones,
they made money.
They sunk a good amount of money, but HBO had a model that then Netflix tried to chase, which was basically they would have really premier prestige programming that would draw people in, that would draw subscribers in, and then they would fill it out with a bunch of movies that they licensed. But they were able to, because they would have X amount of hits that would drive subscribers, they were able to create quality programming across the board that didn't necessarily drive subscribers the same way. And now Netflix is in a different race.
Yeah. I think initially for these groups with these niche programs, it was a brand of cool. I think they were using the brand of cool in order to make their splash and sort of show that they arrived. It was cool to like subscribe to Netflix and watch these shows no one had seen yet. And same with Amazon. It's like, oh my God, like me and just a handful of other people have seen this, and it's that word of mouth thing that we were talking about. They've plateaued on that. Like, cool will no longer sell them their toilet paper, like you said. So now they have to move on to buy us a Lord of the Rings. But I think they wanted those cults around Amazon, around Netflix, and that's, I think, what they were trying to build with these niche programs.
Amazon just spends so much money too. Always like, man, people love to spend money. Speaking of spending money, this is another thing it's gonna all tie together eventually. We're gonna come back to streaming, but first, let's talk about the average movie ticket price. We talked about this, I think, a little bit the other day. The National Association of Theater Owners has released 2017's official average movie ticket price, and I am jealous because it's $8.97. However, $8.97, I have never paid that for a movie ticket. It's up 4%. And here's the thing that's troubling is that ticket sales are down. They're at an all-time low, lowest since 1992. And yet the cost of a ticket is way up. And so what does that say about where things are headed in terms of theaters and how often people are going to go to the theater anymore? Not great things. Two huge, and this is in the midst of two huge hits this summer.
We had two top 10 domestically, two all-time top 10 movies, Beauty and the Beast and The Last Jedi. But they bracketed the year. At the same time, the summer this year was abysmal, and it just kind of shows that it's, I don't know, it's a mixed thing of just like, well, does that mean that you just need these big tent poles and that this was a poor summer? But the big tent poles were the one why we had the poor summer, because no one went to see the big tent poles. So maybe there's a correlation between the fact that ticket prices are at an all-time high and attendance is at an all-time low. Maybe there's some kind of a causation there.
Well, do you think
a supply and a demand, you say?
Yeah. Increased things in the marketplace, more options. Maybe when you have more competition than ever, the fact that the cost of your product continues to rise maybe isn't the best. I'm no marketing major. I'm just a caveman. But maybe when you have more competition than ever before, it's not a good idea for the price of your product to keep getting more expensive.
I think they don't know what to do.
Well, as we know, the people with the
bad
most
for theater
time
owners.
on their hands and who are the most obsessed with movies are also the richest people. You know,
Yeah,
like hardcore movie
traditionally.
fans are traditionally like the 1%.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So for those of you that don't read Spencer, that was sarcasm.
Snark Week.
Isn't it crazy to think that in the Depression that going to a movie was like the thing that people could do, like spend their 10 cents on to get a little hit of happiness in the middle of all that misery, and now it's so prohibitive?
And then Waylon Yutani found it.
We just have airplane glue.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's really too bad, but I do feel for theater owners in the sense of like, they have tried so many different strategies at this point
Except
in terms
lowering
of
the
like,
ticket price.
well, yeah, but I mean, at a certain point, if you're talking about studios demanding more of a percentage of this ticket price,
Well-
then they're competing with these theaters that are premier theaters that they thought for a while, maybe if we just make them fancier and fancier, people will go. New technologies, I think they're like, what the hell do we do?
Do you think, a question off of that, do you think Disney's sort of aggressive tactics in terms of the demands they've been making on theater chains, do you guys think that's because they sort of see that the end is coming, so they might as well just squeeze the last juice out of the thing? Or
I think
Joe segue. Do we have one?
no,
Graphic?
I have no graphics.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think they're doing that because it's a chicken or the egg situation.
I know my job's on the line.
I think that they're doing that because they know they can, because they know
your
that they
graphic?
release movies that people go to see, which means that they can negotiate for a bigger share of it. However, at the same time, that means that theaters are having a bigger trouble. But it's like it's both sides are playing against each other, and I don't think they even realize it. Like, they need to be big boys and sit down at a table and say, like, our industry's in
girls.
trouble, and girls, metaphorical
Big
boys.
adults.
Yeah.
Big adults. and sit down at a table together and, actually, it's Jerry. They need to Jerry Maguire this thing. They need to actually start
Take
being
the
Jenny
honest.
Maguire.
They need to Jerry or Jenny Maguire this situation and sit down and be honest, because there's a reality to this situation that I don't think anyone. They're just like, whatever, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. We just keep charging more. It'll be fine. It's like, it's not going to be fine, but that causes studios like Disney to be more draconian, and because well, we're the only ones that people are going to see. But did you look at The Last Jedi? It shed more theaters because they had that Disney 4-week exclusive.
Yeah.
As soon as that 4-week exclusive was done, it lost a quarter of its theaters, and I think part of it was because there was such a backlog because of that requirement that the studios, theater chains are like, I got to get this out of here. I got Jumanji doing well, whereas if you had it's just like
It's all short term.
It's
You got
all
to think a little big picture here.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I
Or-
think Disney is thinking big picture.
If you want to take a red pill, it's because it had girls in it.
Yeah,
And nothing to do
definitely.
with market or competition.
Well, gender-free McGuire would take the fish in the
No, it's
following
Jerry with the G.
ways.
G-E-R-I.
G-E-R-I. I actually know
coming to
Jerry.
theaters 2022.
Gender-free McGuire.
Gender-free McGuire. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I was
Okay,
thinking
got it.
Jerry with the G-E-R-I. I could see
Starring Tiffany Haddish. And I'll watch it.
that I would watch.
I would watch
Yeah.
that. Write it, Joe. Write it. Write it for all of us.
I better,
Make it a
because they're not
viral
giving me
hit.
any segues here.
Make it a viral hit. I do think that actually Disney knows exactly what they're doing, and here's why. So this is also out of NAPT. NAPT.
They need to fix that. This
Fix
is,
it.
Like,
That's
come on,
not
guys.
an easy to say acronym. Screw you.
NAPP.
In any event, this is the Streaming Summit. There was an executive panel about streaming, and the Wall Street analyst Michael Nathanson talked about Disney's approach in terms of their streaming services and how it evolved even from last August to now, saying, quote, it basically went from Kids Plus to Marvel Plus Kids to, you know what, fuck it, we're buying Fox. And like, like it didn't actually happen that quickly because the deal between Disney and Fox obviously was a long negotiation. But the point is they recognized, and I think the large reason that Disney bought Fox, we're excited about the Wolverine Iron Man battle to come, but was to get all of that backlog of content to use it for their streaming service. So he says only having a brand gets you so far in the world we're going to. You need to aggregate. You needed to be big. You need to have something that was so overwhelming that a show is just
Oh, they got
one brick.
Chuggington on there?
There, one customer, one brick in a massive platform. Disney's telling you where they're going. They've got a great brand to build on in order to when they need to aggregate a ton of content that could be bigger in brand itself. Now, this is where, to me, it gets pretty interesting. They're talking about the differences between scale and reach, right? So, which is what we were talking about. You want to have seemingly both. You want to have a show that's a premier, prestigious show that gets you attention from like the hoi polloi and so forth, and makes you look like, oh, they have content we have to watch because like that's the important content, but also have a ton of content and a big reach and big premiere shows that draw on a lot of audience. So Netflix does huge numbers on their Adam Sandler movies, but they're also getting a ton of attention on their more premiere programming, and it probably doesn't do nearly what the Adam Sandler movies do. So Disney is making a play to enter this race, which Herb Chanel, formerly of Nickelodeon and the BBC, says it feels like we're back to the big three, referencing ABC, CBS, and NBC, the big three networks, with Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu, who are now basically broadcasters. But Disney's talking about entering that race, and they've got to fight, right? So they've got to have a ton of content. They've got the Disney brand, and they've got to expand out of that if they're going to want to win this. And then they're going to be competing against things like Apple that, again, just are going to be like, oh, I can piss money all day long. You want to piss money? I'm going to piss money. You want to piss money?
That's
I'm pissing money.
actually their slogan.
That is their slogan.
Apple.
Piss
You
money?
want piss money?
I got money to piss.
I got money.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Disney is now the majority owner of Hulu, so it's not like
They are, yeah.
They will be.
They
will
are.
be.
So it's like Hulu. Yeah, they have Hulu. You're right. They
Right.
have Hulu. They're going to have their own streaming service. Who knows what they're going to do with Hulu at that point, right?
yeah.
They may why not just knock it out?
I mean,
there's
it's
longer
gonna
term
die anyway.
contract. They
there-
can't
there are
just
other
do that.
owners. There'll be a majority owner, but they
Yeah.
can't just cancel
They
Hulu.
can't. They can't.
Sure.
They can't. But they
But
can
Who's
drive
gonna
it out
choke
over
out
time.
anyway.
They can try,
because you've got these bigger broadcasters, but then below that, you've got everybody else that's T minus who knows how long until they have to run Patreons to survive. You've got the CW that's like, we're doing our own thing, because all of these different channels are pulling their content from companies like Hulu so that they can try to get in there and do it themselves. That's why I can't watch Crazy Ex-Girlfriend or Comedy Central shows on
have that.
It's
Hulu
on
as
Amazon.
much
They have
anymore.
Crazy
It's on Amazon.
Old stuff. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
come up
You
regularly
gotta
anymore.
buy it though on Amazon.
Yeah.
I gotta get my budget under control. That's a whole other topic. But one of the problems that Hulu faces as compared to, like, it really shouldn't be in the same category as these other two, because one of the big issues that it has is international licensing. That's where Hulu gets complicated, because the shows that are broadcast here, the licensing deals are the networks have the licensing deals here domestically. But so like if Fox made a show and then I'm NBC and I license it from Fox Studios, I have that license here domestically, but I don't necessarily have it internationally, and you're going to sell those rights internationally, and that's where it gets really tricky for Hulu. They can't, like, if you go to a different country, you're not necessarily going to have access to your Hulu, versus Netflix, which does these all over deals, and then they can have it anywhere, their content.
Yeah.
That's true for their originals,
Buyouts.
but if you like log into Netflix from another country,
They
it's
have
No,
a
you're
different,
not gonna-
certain
different
things that
catalog.
you can't get here. And,
Which is why they're putting so much money into
Yeah.
their original programming, where
just
they
nothing
own
but chin-chin.
everything
Yeah.
top to bottom.
this is cyclical. This happens with every new industry. Look at the .com industry. The .com thing happened, and then everybody was a millionaire. Everyone had a website. Everything was huge. And then it just contracted and consolidated, and there were the giants left, and then a bunch of people went out of business. Look at this industry. Look at new media. 5, 6, 7 years ago, how many dozens of different channels and networks and providers and things. I mean, everybody was doing 15 different shows, and now we're in a process as an industry. You're seeing a consolidation of people, just kind of like things coming together, shrinking, getting smaller. That's what happens.
Sure.
There's a new industry. People are excited. You invest a buttload of money into it. Everybody tries everything, and then you sort out. And this is what's happening now with this streaming thing. Is like, streaming is a thing that people invested billions of dollars into, and now all of these companies are going to have to reconcile. We can't continue to perpetually spend billions of dollars. So what's the future of this thing? We tried everything. Well, what works now? And that's what we're finding out. But it's also happening at a time where, because you're in competition with the studios, it feels like we're moving toward a point where you can either be a global multi-billion-dollar corporation with 18 different entertainment arms, or Neon, putting out $1 million great movies, and there's no middle, which sucks. That's not good for, I mean, personally, if you ask me, that's not good for creativity. It's not particularly good for commerce, but that is the reality of it used to be that studios were a division of a corporation, kind of left on their own, and now they are the corporation. That's just how it works.
Sure.
So
Pour one out for the middle.
exactly, there's no more. It sucks. If I'm being honest, I think it kind of sucks the way that we're
Well,
going.
to me, the middle has gone to television.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mid-budget movies are now prestige TV shows, which have.
But Amazon's stopping now. They're saying, like, we're not even going to do those anymore. We're going to make.
What happens to FX with Disney? I mean, my hope is that FX actually continues to do what it does really well, which is exactly that.
I mean, they go to
Because
Disney streaming, I think.
Right, but because Disney doesn't have that, right? Like, they don't have an arm that does that kind of programming, that they're like, you know what you're doing, you do you.
Sure.
Gotcha, I see what
I
you're
think they'd be stupid to Disneyfy Always Sunny in Philadelphia, for example.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
I'd kind of watch it.
No, oh, God.
I don't think anybody would try to do that, but
No.
hey, you never know
I just.
But
hate
I would
this-
like to see an episode in which they comment on the idea that would happen.
that they're now a division of
Yeah.
Disney.
Yes.
I hate this mentality, and Amazon's working for it, and even Sony's saying, this thing of just like, nothing works unless everything is bigger, broader, more internationally appealing. I don't think that's necessarily the truth.
Welcome to capitalism, Dan.
Movie by
No,
spreadsheet.
I'm saying, like, they didn't make Get Out thinking, Get Out wasn't a hit because it was a big budget blockbuster. It was a hit because people liked it. Split wasn't a hit because it was a big budget blockbuster. It was a hit because people liked it. Wonder Woman didn't outgross Justice League because it had a bigger budget and more movie stars. It outgrossed Justice League because people liked it better, and it was a much lower budget. It was, it was what the studios would say that is impossible, which is like you don't have a proven director and you don't have a proven movie star. It is way too low of a budget and it's a niche movie. It'll never do well, and it outgrossed their surefire $1 billion grosser. They're squeezing out the concept that maybe if you do quality, people might like it.
Well, I guess I'm not necessarily trying to speak in defense of studios, but I think the question you brought up earlier, how you make us a viral video, I don't think that's new. Anytime Hollywood has managed to crank out something amazing, the studios have gone, how we make a viral video? That's why there's so many insane Star Wars knockoffs after Star Wars came out. Anytime there's a hit, no one ever goes, is it because really talented people worked really hard on a good idea and we supported it and it happened? It's always like, how do we do that? And that's how you get Krolls after your Conans, I guess. Is because everyone goes, just make us the viral video, do what they did.
But how many times does that fail? Does that strategy have to fail before people go?
Oh, you're asking how many times human beings have to learn the same lesson over and over and over again?
Infinity.
I don't know. We'll find out when the world burns next year.
Yeah.
Calling it. Wow.
Prophecy!
I wasn't quite going there. I was going more toward movies are going to get worse, but okay.
Oh, I'm full Book of Revelation at this point, Rob.
Art and commerce have always made awkward bedfellows, and the type of people who become, green light executives, and the type of people who grow up to make stories and tell their stories. It's a very different mentality, and the smart ones realize that they can recognize talent or recognize a good story, but that's so rare.
But the thing is, formula worked for a long time. And if you look at the history of movie making and the Western and noir and then
that's
television,
not formula,
and
that's a
sitcoms,
genre.
Yeah, it's a genre, but that's also a formula. And was everyone a standout? No. Was everyone amazing? No. But it was a huge success financially for a really long time. I'm not saying I like that. I don't. I'm like watching FX with you, man, and the weird shit that you can find on Netflix and all of that. But the world just doesn't work that way. But it's gonna burn, so don't worry.
I'm saying that people kind of say like, oh, what a utopian vision. The world just doesn't work that way. The world has worked. Movies have worked that way. They can work that way.
Sure.
If only people would stop saying the world doesn't work that way and start saying maybe we can succeed by being better than everyone.
I'm not saying,
bigger, better.
Dan, I'm not arguing with your point of view in terms of it would be great if that happens. I'm saying that we want people, other humans, to think the way that we do, but if thought the way that they do, we would be executives. Do you see what I'm saying?
No.
Here's my point.
One more crack at it.
Here's my point. I agree with you. We're sitting behind this table doing an internet program about movies we like. That's what we're doing with our lives. But the people that are executives don't think in a way that would have led them down the path to be doing that with their lives.
So you're saying they're
You'll
better
get
than
into
us?
something
I don't. What are
weird,
you
dude.
I'm
saying?
not saying they're better than us. I'm saying they don't think like us. I'm saying they, for the most part, and there are rare exceptions with really brilliant, forward-thinking producers and executives who get it. But for the most part, the people that land in those positions because they think like the people that were in those positions before them. Does that make sense?
I guess what I'm saying
Because of the mooch.
it's not
Am I
so much
making any sense?
It's not so much a pie in the sky thing.
So that Billy did this, so I'm going to assume no, and we should end. But you end on a rant.
Well, it's not a rant. I was just going to say, it's not so much a pie in the sky thing as I think there's enough empirical evidence to suggest that, many times if you trust somebody who's competent to do something that they're passionate about, the results bear out in the box office.
You're not wrong, but no one who is in the position to do anything about it thinks like you.
Just let me. All I'm saying is that I'm not saying, oh my God, I wish I lived in this utopia where everybody thought like I did. I'm saying I think that there's empirical evidence that if you are that bean counter that gets promoted to an executive, that it makes smart business sense to invest in projects that have succeeded. Avatar had no reason to succeed. It's the biggest moneymaker of all time. It was James Cameron on a green screen studio alone. That's not the kind of safe bet that most studios would invest in. That was a risk. Titanic was going to be a disaster. That was a massive global hit. I'm saying that they've lost so much time investing in the sure thing, and kind of half-assing it because whatever. I think there's enough evidence to suggest that if you do go out on a limb and trust people, you can make huge rewards, but everyone seems to ignore those, and they only pay attention to, well, Lord of the Rings did well, so we're just going to knock it off.
I don't disagree with you, but investing in a James Cameron movie after Titanic was not necessarily taking a big risk. It was James Cameron who worked and gave us Titanic, and so he's got this new thing, and so that's actually not a huge risk.
I'd like to bring up a dystopian counterfactual is, what if there just aren't that many good ideas? So there just aren't that many good original ideas per year, and so in lieu of that, might as well go with the generic one.
Sure. Here's my thought is that movie making is really difficult. It's hard to make a good movie. It's hard to make a movie at all. It's hard to make a movie that makes any effing sense. I don't know if anybody's ever tried. It's not easy. And so for me, the fact that we get as many great movies as we do is kind of a miracle. No one wants to make a bad one. People are making the best decisions that they possibly can make with the information that they have, which is depressing sometimes. Having said that, what I was trying to say is that I love what you're saying, and I think you're smart and wonderful. I think that probably for the most part, we want a world in which people see things the way that we do because solutions appear to be simple, but maybe it's just a little more complex than that for the people that are actually in that position. I don't know. And it's all gonna burn, so it don't matter.
And from the ashes, Murrell Studios will rise.
Murrell Studios.
Things are Murrellverse. I think there's a path to a great world out there. People just have to take it.
You can't force other people to do anything. We just have to live by example the best that we can. Okay. And then let people have their autonomy and make their choices, including studio executives. We welcome you to fail.
Bring it back to yoga, Roth.
And we will make sure to make fun of you when you do.
This one got super weird. But I agree with you. And you. And I love these guys. And it's all great. It's going to be fantastic. We'll kumbaya as it all falls to ash.
Namaste.